one of the biggest bulls on Wall Street, Fundstrat's Tom Lee. And I should have said that because you think the first part of this year, despite being bullish for the whole year, could be a little bit skimpy in terms of return.
Yes, Brian. I think we've got to digest that huge move you talked about.
Where's Tom Lee and what have you done with him? You were Mr. Bull last year. You were right on the mark about everything, and now you're a little more cautious.
Yeah, maybe it's because I skimped on the appetizers.
That's it. Well, that's later.
Yes. Yeah, I'm still optimistic for the year. But, you know, in the first half, and we got a glimpse of that today with Fed governors talking about not sure how many cuts they want to do. That's going to make markets nervous. And we got a pretty lousy Empire survey reading today, a regional PMI, and that's going to get people worried about a soft landing or hard landing. Those don't get answered for the next 6 months. So I think it's possible that we make a minor new high before the end of the month, and then we might have something like a 7% drawdown.
The Fed governor you're referring to is a gentleman named Christopher Waller, very smart guy, but he's not Jerome Powell. He is not the chair of the Federal Reserve. With all due respect to Mr. Waller, why is Wall Street suddenly paying so much attention to these one or two couple comments?
It's a fair question. We know for the last 2 years the Fed's been fighting inflation. So we know what that kind of regime and playbook is. Now we're moving to a playbook of, well, inflation is slowing. The Fed wants to keep real rates from getting too high, but we don't know what kind of cuts and when those happen. That's the nervousness we're going to have over the next 6 months.
I don't like to place too much credence in 1 month of data, particularly among some of these sort of smaller or more regional Fed surveys or surveys of this or surveys of that. You referenced one, though. This is the Empire Manufacturing Survey, folks. If you don't know what we're talking about, don't worry. 95% of you probably don't. It is a manufacturing survey around New York State, and usually it gets completely ignored by Wall Street. Nobody cares, except this data point, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, came in so awful that even people who didn't care about this Empire survey suddenly started to care.
Yeah, it was pretty atrocious.
It was awful. But you think it's just one noisy data piece?
There's a lot of things that can make it noisy. We know supply chains are being rerouted right now, and we know markets have been tumultuous. And, you know, we've seen that during weeks of market corrections, regional surveys often tank because the purchasing manager might just say things are worse, but it's because the stock market's down. So it's really hard to know how much is signal versus other things contributing to it.
But I want to be optimistic today, and you do remain bullish. 5,200, correct?
Yes.
On the S&P is your price target for the year. That is not changing.
Yeah, I think investors who are long-term oriented should really just ignore the first 6 months. You know, we have a Fed that's going to be shifting from being really tight to accommodative. Earnings are recovering. We've got interest rates coming down. That's great news for consumers. And I think businesses in general have a CapEx cycle ahead. So, I mean, the stock market should do well this year. It's just, it doesn't mean it's a straight up.
Well, that's about a 9% gain from where we are now. If you are also correct in that the market tumbles a little bit in the next couple of months, you know, we all know it takes a bigger gain to get back to where you were after a drop because of something called math. So it's going to take maybe a 15% jump from the trough to get to that 5,200.
Yes, Brian, that's right. I think there's a chance at some point this year, maybe it's June, you have a chance to make 20% between now and year end. And I think small caps could make a bigger move, you know, 50 or 60%. So I think there's still...
What?
Yeah, I think the IWM could end the year, Russell 2000 could end above 3,000.
Now, I did not know you were going to say that. One of my 4 predictions, and no one cares what I think, but I do these predictions so people can tell me I'm wrong, and because they love to say you're wrong, right? Was that small caps would outperform the S&P 500. S&P 500 just seems 2.5 times sales, so far more expensive than any other major index around the world. It sounds like you would agree that people might start to find out there are a couple of other 1,000 stocks out there which may deserve their attention.
That's right. And small caps relative to S&P on a price to book basis back to where they were in 99. That was a launch point for 12 years of gain. So yeah, I'd agree with you. I think the calculus is favorable for small caps.
Repeat that. Small caps price to book 99.
Relative to the S&P 500 is back to where it was in 1999, which was the absolute low, and was a launch point, 12 years of outperformance of small caps.
Wow, I wish I would have known that. I would have put that in my prediction. It sounded a lot smarter than I was. That's interesting. I mean, but that is small caps, much more than large caps, which do a lot of business around the world. Small caps purely are a play on the domestic American economy, are they not?
That's right. And you know what we have to appreciate is small caps often dominate their industry. So what you'd call a high Herfindahl index company, you know, they could be the top 2 or 3 player. It's just a smaller market. That's why they're a small cap company.
High Herfindahl?
Yeah, it's a measure of market concentration.
What's a Herfindahl? Sounds like something my wife's German grandfather would have driven around. I just bought the Herfindahl, but she broke down.
Yes, it's an index created to measure market concentration. The Department of Justice looks at it, which is why they might not want the JetBlue Spirit merger to happen, is the HHI gets too high. But what small caps often dominate, whether it's HVAC or certain plumbing industries, they're the best player. It's just a small market.
Because by the way, those are some of the richest people in America, too. The people that do these industries no one thinks about, they roll them up. Yeah. How did you become a billionaire? I'm the sausage king of Chicago, Abe Frobman, right? I mean, it happens.
That's right. I mean, that is the true American story. These are great businesses and very profitable.
I love it. High Herfindahl. Any day you can learn something is a good day. I learned something. The High Herfindahl Index. Tom Lee, great stuff. Thank you.
Great to see you.